Hello there. So when faced with picking our traits, most of us have spent ages thinking of which negatives to choose. I know that some of them can be daunting and can have some significant impacts on your playthrough. But what if I told you that most of them aren't as negative as you may think? I'm here to walk you through the negative traits and how we can combat most of them and turn them into free points for those juicy positive traits. This is slightly longer than my previous videos, so grab a cup of coffee or a fresh cabbage from your thriving survivor farm. Oh, before I forget, consider subscribing and dropping a like. It really helps. That said, let us begin. Sunday driver means you drive slow. I mean really slow. It reduces your acceleration rate by 40% and your reverse acceleration by 30%. Top that off with a max speed across all vehicles of 30 miles per hour. Now, it is very easy to crash a ride in this game if you aren't careful. Driving slowly in towns is a good thing so you don't crash, but this is something you should be doing anyway. Taking Sunday driver will make long distance trips between towns tedious, especially when using slower vehicles like the step vans. The quality of life cost just doesn't justify taking Sunday driver as it only gives 1 point. All thumbs gives 300% inventory transferring time. If you are the nomadic type who likes to move from place to place and generally keeps their loot stockpile lean, this one might be okay to take. However, as you get further into the game, you will quickly learn to hate this trait when you're trying to manage all your loot in your base or when you need to loot a building in a hurry. It only gives 2 points back, which in my opinion doesn't quite justify taking this as you can't get rid of the debuff. Oh boy, Clumsy. So the zombies in Project Zomboid have very strong senses of hearing and sight. Clumsy increases the sound of your footsteps by 20%, which if you are indoors is quite a decent increase. Sight-related aggro can be broken fairly easily, but sound is a reliable way for the zombies to find you. It also increases your chances to trip when vaulting over objects or when you run into zombies. It's okay to take if you're playing with shamblers on, as you can get away much easier, but if you are a true masochist and play with sprinters, taking Clumsy can mean you will trip in the absolute worst of times. All in all, it is workable, especially if you aren't that big on stealth and have a good understanding of how the game works. For the 2 points it gives, you can work around it by leveling your light-footed skill up a little bit. Panic is an interesting mechanic in Project Zomboid. Over time, you can sort of become desensitized after you've killed enough zombies. Not quite like the desensitized trait which Veteran gives you, more so your panic recovery speed increases. Cowardly makes it difficult to manage panic, as you will receive 100% increased panic from all sources except for phobias. Cowardly also cannot be remedied, so you will begin to rely heavily on pills and alcohol if you want to keep it down. This will be supported by the natural panic reduction over time. There is a positive trait that synergizes fairly well with panic, and that's Adrenaline Junkie, which makes you move much faster when highly panicked. Cowardly has one very strange advantage. Because you panic over almost everything, it can even alert you to a potential zombie that you can't see, which can save you in a pinch. I personally don't enjoy having to manage my panic, especially if you're unlucky enough not to find any beta blockers, although it can have its benefits and it is a worthwhile consideration. As its name suggests, short-sighted gives you a shorter view distance. I've played with this many times and it hasn't impacted me as much as I thought it would. It can be easily countered by wearing glasses, so we can see it as a free 2 points. A word of warning though, there will be some situations where your glasses will fall off, so make sure to keep an extra pair in your inventory. Slow Reader makes you read books 30% slower. For single player, this isn't much of a problem, as you can just speed up the time. For multiplayer, it is pure agony. All your friends will be leagues ahead of you in skill books before you finished your first few. As you advance later into your playthrough and have read all the skill books, Slow Reader is not much of an issue as it kind of falls away. It's worth it for the free 2 points. Weak Stomach gives you a 100% chance for food illness. Food poisoning only comes from eating rotten and uncooked food, which you shouldn't be doing anyway. As long as you stick to eating good food, you just landed yourself 3 free points. It's an easy pick. The negative trait for the true shut-in. Your character gets freaked out just by being outdoors. Over a very long period of time, your panic recovery rate will eventually balance out Agoraphobic, so it won't have that great of an effect on you. So if you can manage using beta blockers for a while, it nets you 4 points to spend. Conversely to Agoraphobic, You get panicked in tight spaces. The smaller the space, the faster your panic rises. More specifically, less than 70 plus tile rooms. You can sort of remedy this by placing a bed in a large room and sleeping there. Best to not set up your base in a small house, rather go for something like an open factory with plenty of space so it is less of a hassle. When you're out looting and you don't have the luxury of being in a large open room, make sure to have some beta blockers on you. Over time, your panic reduction rate will catch up to it and it will balance it out, so it will affect you less. I personally don't play with either of these traits much, but I can see the benefits in the long term of them, given that they can be managed fairly well. They are worth considering. Conspicuous increases the chances of a zombie seeing you by 100%. I've done a bit of testing regarding stealth and have come to the conclusion that you will get spotted almost always if you step into a zombie's line of sight. It's easier to build around footstep noise reduction, as that is a bit more reliable when trying to be sneaky. Because of this, Conspicuous is actually 4 free trait points. It does not affect you nearly as much as you might think. Oh, you are going to learn to hate this one. Especially in multiplayer when your friend has filled the containers way past the capacity that you are able to deposit items in. Gives you a 30% reduction to container size, including your backpacks. Hard to counter this bad boy. 10 out of 10, would not recommend. You're going to spend more time than you need micromanaging your inventory and not worth the quality of life cost. Not for the faint-hearted. It reduces your perception radius to the point where a zombie can sneak up behind you and you won't even notice until it's too late, leading up to the dreaded bite wound that signals the end of your character's run. The same way that sound plays a role for zombie aggro, it's also one of your key survival methods. In my opinion, only suitable for those who want a true hardcore playthrough, so if you are brave enough to pick this, good luck to you. Hearty Appetite increases your hunger rate by 50%. When I first started playing, I used this often, but over time I realized it's more of a pain than it needs to be. You will get hungry very quickly and can quickly run through food supplies, especially on long trips. Hearty Appetite will stay with you forever and, in my opinion, is more of a pain in the ass than helpful. Pacifist reduces your XP gained with weapons, maintenance, and aiming by 25%. All in all, this could be a positive if you're in a custom sandbox and have upped the XP multiplier. If you're in it for the long haul, you will eventually get there, just a little slower, so if you can handle a bit more of a grind, it's worth taking. Commonly viewed as one of the free negative traits, it increases the zombification rate if bitten and also increases the chances of catching a cold. Zombification will happen regardless if you get bitten. Just lock up your body and wait to die. With prone to illness, it will still give you around a day to get that done. If you picked Outdoorsman, and you should be, it is a god tier trait. The increased chance to catch a cold will be balanced out. After all that, we're left with 4 free points. Sleepyhead has more of an effect in solo than in multiplayer, especially if the server you are on has sleep disabled. It increases the rate at which you get tired by 30%, and it also grants 18% less tiredness recovery rate when you sleep, meaning you'll have to sleep for longer. Now, with careful planning when you head out for the day, this won't have as much of an effect as one might think. To counteract the tiredness, you can take power naps during the day by using an alarm of some sort and make use of vitamins to help combat tiredness. Smoker is a great trait to take overall and can have many benefits in your playthrough. If your character hasn't lit up in a while, you will become anxious. Cigarettes are quite common around the map. Just loot a few gas stations and police stations and you're all set. You'll most likely end up with more cigarettes than your black little lungs can handle. What smoking does do, it completely negates stress and unhappiness when smoking, so it's a handy one to have when managing these moodles overall. It also gives us 4 points, which is nothing to scoff at. I've played with this on most of my playthroughs and it's one of my personal favorites. I've tested the lucky positive trait a few times and can confirm it has an effect on rare loot that you find. More specifically, rarer weapons, guns, and ammo. Unlucky would make it harder to find these, especially if you have reduced your loot settings in a custom sandbox. Neither lucky or unlucky can be used in co-op. Best used if you are looking for more of a challenging playthrough. There's no way around this one aside from acting as a difficulty modifier for your game. So in general, you won't be running or sprinting as much in Project Zomboid because your base walking speed can outrun shamblers. Sprinters are a different story though. Asthmatic increases endurance loss from running and sprinting by 100% and a 30% increased endurance loss when swinging a weapon. Here's where it gets tough. In extended combat, this will work heavily against you, especially if you are a blunt weapon player or one who likes heavier weapons. With Asthmatic, you will have to take frequent rests to combat the increased exhaustion when you're out on runs. Your character gains panic when performing first aid on yourself and stressed when you are bloody, which is pretty much most of the time. Now, the stress caused by fear of blood can be dealt with by taking Smoker, as cigarettes quickly reduce stress and will help you keep it under control. However, unlike the other panic traits such as Claustrophobic or Agoraphobic, this one is tough to get rid of. The panic when performing first aid will slowly even out over time as your panic recovery increases, but this can take a while. If you can keep up with taking regular baths and having some clean clothes lying around, it becomes manageable enough to take as a negative. Using weapons with longer reach will also help a little bit with keeping your clothes cleaner. Or you can chain smoke the hell out of your cigarettes when you're out on your runs. One has to deal with the stress somehow. Feeble reduces your strength by 2, but you can get rid of it by leveling your strength to 5. Sure, your melee damage and carrying capacity will take a knock initially, but if you can focus on leveling your strength, you can lose the Feeble debuff. Carry heavy stuff around often and you'll get there in no time. Worth taking as it is easily remedied with a little bit of time and effort, but will definitely make your start more challenging. High Thirst increases your thirst by 100%. I'm quite a fan of High Thirst as it is essentially free points and common for most players to take. Considering that water is quite abundant as long as you've set up enough rain collectors after the water supply shuts off or are near a lake, you should be fine. Make sure you have enough water bottles on you when doing extended supply runs. You're going to need them. Out of the strength and fitness skills, fitness is the harder one to level. Out of shape reduces your fitness by 2 and can be remedied by leveling your fitness to 5. If you can handle the initial reduction to your fitness, it can be fixed by just doing the things you would normally do around the map. A fairly hefty one to take, but you can lose it by losing weight and bringing yourself down to 80 kilos. Equally, you can gain Obese if you increase your weight to 100. You're already almost there because your starting weight will be 95 kilos. Aside from the increased starting weight, Overweight increases your chances of tripping when vaulting, 30% less endurance regeneration, increased fall damage, and of course, less running speed. One more thing to note is that the fitness debuff it gives is permanent, meaning you cannot reach fitness level 10, which isn't that big of a deal depending on how you look at it. Good to consider taking this as a strict veggie diet or a low calorie diet combined with some exercise and you'll reduce your weight soon enough. Just be careful in the beginning and you're good to go. However, I do feel that the adaptive weight traits like underweight and very underweight would be a better choice. Restless Sleeper is manageable, but very annoying as it can involve a lot of micromanagement. Restless Sleeper means you get less quality sleep, as in for less hours, and a 50% slower loss of tiredness when sleeping. Essentially, you'll be tired most of the time, which will impact every other activity you do. You can potentially get around this by taking frequent power naps, but that can disrupt your runs quite a bit. Personally, I prefer the positive trait Wakeful over taking Restless Sleeper. It's worth it. For 6 points, Slow Healer is an easy pick. Most of the time, your deaths won't be caused by injuries. The only downside is that broken bones will take longer to heal. As long as you're careful and don't fall down buildings or do something stupid, it's super manageable. Slow Learner reduces XP gain for all skills except for fitness and strength by 30%. Unless you're in it for a long playthrough, this one hurts quite a bit if you're wanting to get up to speed very quickly. For core skills like mechanics, electronics, and maintenance, which already take long to level, this makes it so much worse. If you're playing on a custom sandbox with a higher XP multiplier to balance out the negative side effects of Slow Learner, then it's manageable. Not worth the 6 points it gives in my opinion. Another one of the adaptive traits that can be countered by increasing your weight. Underweight decreases your melee damage by 20% and a 10% increased chance to trip. I usually take this one in my playthroughs. Your melee damage will suffer a bit in the beginning, but munching on high calorie food will sort this one out soon. Surviving on a strictly snack diet increases your weight surprisingly fast. On to Illiterate. As its name suggests, your character is an uneducated heathen who cannot read books. Skill books help a ton with leveling skills and getting your character up to speed quicker. Taking Illiterate means you cannot read them, or any other literature for that matter. This will leave you with trying to find VHS tapes to help fast track your skills, or doing it the old-fashioned way, doing various activities without the aid of the skill multiplier that the books give. One of the more masochistic traits to deal with and not worth the points it gives. It hamstrings you too much in my opinion. Thin-skinned reduces your chances of not being injured by zombies by 23%, along with 100% chance of getting hurt when moving through trees. How this trait works, similarly to thick-skinned, is it decreases your dodge chance when getting damaged by a zombie. Damage from zombies also takes into account your block chance, your strength, and your fitness. As long as you're wearing good protection when you're engaging in combat, this reduction isn't as big as it seems. Taking all of the before factors into account, you really only have between 5 to 8% higher chance of being damaged, which, if you are careful, is not a lot. As for the tree damage, it can be remedied with taking Outdoorsman, which you should always be taking as a positive trait. All in all, it's worth considering for the 8 points it gives. Of all the adaptive weight traits, this one will most likely kill you in the beginning. Obese starts you off at 105 kilos. It grants you 20% increased chance to trip, 60% less endurance regeneration, and 40% more fall damage with an increased chance to gain a deeper wound from falling. You also cannot level your fitness past 6. Even though this one can be fixed with a good diet and exercise, the negative debuff on your fitness is just too heavy on your character. Rather go for one of the other adaptive weight traits as they are better options. Fitness is a valuable skill to have, as it affects combat, running, stamina, and more. Unfit reduces fitness by 4, starting you off at level 1 fitness in most cases, assuming you haven't picked any other traits to boost your fitness skill. You can get rid of it by increasing your fitness, but as we all know, it's among the most tedious skills to level. It's doable, but it will take a while to fix this one, and in my opinion, not worth the points. Similar to Underweight, this trait starts you off at a featherweight of 60 kilos. It gives 40% reduction in melee damage and 30% reduced endurance regeneration. Now, between Obese and very underweight, this I would consider to be the better option. Obese hits your endurance regeneration like a truck, among other debuffs that have consistently made testing playthroughs tedious. With very underweight, sure, your melee damage will take quite a knock in the beginning, but the same with Underweight, just make sure to munch on high calorie food and you can deal with it much quicker than you can with Obese. Your fitness will level up passively as you move around. For the 10 points it gives, it's worth a consideration if you want a slightly more challenging start that can be overcome with a little time and being careful. Weak gives you a debuff of 40% less melee damage, which is pretty huge, as well as a reduction to carry weight because of the -5 to strength. It's an adaptive trait that can be fixed by leveling your strength up, which can take a while. A long while. Remember that in the early game, you are at your most vulnerable, so take this with some caution. You will most likely struggle. Of all the traits I'd consider masochistic, this is the very definition of the word. Def removes the perception circle around your character so you do not know when a zombie is sneaking up on you. You also cannot hear house alarms, zombies breaking down windows or doors, sirens, or just a general horde coming your way. This should only be picked if you want the ultimate challenge in Project Zomboid. It requires mastery over the game and constant awareness of your surroundings, as you'll be relying on sight alone. To the few of you brave enough to take this trait, I salute you. I've tried it once, never again. That's it for the negative traits. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. If I've missed anything, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, consider dropping a like and subscribing. It really goes a long way. Good luck out there, survivor.